in a circle thing. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. All right, guys, it's campaign season 2022, and we're pounding our way through all the 10,000 candidates that are running this year. So I'm keeping busy. I got a bunch of stuff. This concludes my interviews for this week, but then I've got like 6 scheduled next week, 5 the week after that, and I've already got 2 for the week after that, and I'm filling holes as much as I can. So we're going to keep them coming hot and fast. Today I've got Reginald M. Jackson. He is running for School Board District 1. We're going to chat about what that means. If you guys remember, I had Brianna on last week. Talked to her a little bit about this District 1 race as well. So we'll see what Mr. Jackson has to say about stuff like that. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can go to our website, almostinagreement.com. All the episodes are available there. While you're there, I'm working on my job description guide, give you a little bit better understanding of what jobs these people are asking for when they're running for office. And at some point, I'll start working on the cheat sheet to give you the breakdown of who's running where as well. Favorite podcast provider, you can get us there. We're on all the major podcast providers. Give us a 5-star review, like, share, whatever it is. Help us get the word out. And with that session of mouth spewing, we're going to get the intro out of the way, and we're going to start talking. Reginald, how are you today?
I'm hanging in there.
Good. All right, so I appreciate you coming out. I'm excited. Like I said in the intro there, we are pounding through a lot of people, and I'm trying to keep a lot of stuff straight in front of me. School board is a particular interest to me. I got 2 kids in the Knox County school system myself. I've had a bunch of the current board members on the show. A lot of funding conversation. That's one of the big ones that tends to go around and stuff like that. But I always like to start, especially with somebody I haven't had on the show before. Let's do the brief history review. Give me a 5-8 minute, breakdown of are you a Knoxville native, that kind of stuff that goes from, where you started to what gets you to today running for this particular seat.
All right, yes, sir. Well, my name is Reginald Jackson, and I'd like to start off that I was born and raised here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I am 5th generation in this town. We've been here a long time. My background goes as I went to high school at West High School. I spent a year in West High School, and then my dad is a pastor, so he moved to Morristown, where I spent my last 3 years in Morristown. From there, I went to the military, spent 8 years in, came out of the military, and coming back to Knoxville.
What branch you serve? Gotta ask that.
Army,
okay. I got a Marine, and he's still a Marine, whatever the stupid rules are for what you call who and where. And so if ever I have any sort of service person on, I have to clarify which, so we can make sure he can make fun of how he wants to with the way Marines like to make fun of everything. Anyway, I apologize. I interrupted. Continue.
And so when I came back to Knoxville, I seen that there were some things that needed to change, especially in the school system. The school system for District 1 is a very big part of what I want to do. And so I am running now to make a difference.
Okay. And so you got kids in the system. What's your, other than being a student of Knox County Schools before you moved to Maryville, as mentioned, what is your connection directly to Knox County Schools?
Well, I do have I had a 18-year-old that, matter of fact, he is 19. And so he went through Knox County Schools, and I got a 9 and an 8-year-old going through right now.
Okay. I don't know why. To me, I guess a parent, it makes more sense as either a parent or a former educator in the system seems to make more sense to me. Not that my, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not that necessarily makes a difference. Because one of the things I joke about with this superintendent search is, what do we want in a superintendent? Because to me, I think one of the things that most people get lost in, and I think school board's a little bit outside of this, but with a lot of these jobs, even though you elected jobs, like we got trustee and register of deeds and stuff like that coming up, it's a managerial position more than it is an actual doing the quote job. Because, trustee is the accountant for the county, but the elected trustee is not doing he's not sitting there on QuickBooks filling in the blanks. He's got a team of people that are doing different stuff, and he's helping manage that set. Right. And so I'm always a little bit confused on some of the way things work, especially with the relationship of the school board and the county and the state being a big factor of how this job specifically in school board works. And so, again, obviously you're a concerned citizen, you've had that history to you, but what made it so that it went from, either advocating an outside stuff as far as like a PTO or something like that to wanting school board to be the position to do it?
Well, I was school security when I got back. So I was in school security for about a year.
Okay.
And we had our big issues in school security.
Right.
And it was no secret with the lawsuits and we had about 45 black officers.
Mm-hmm.
They're down to 9.
Right.
So that was one of my big push for a school board also.
Okay.
Because that's a big thing.
Because again, for me, that's one of those things that I didn't realize. Like I said, I've got kids. My eldest is in 5th grade. He's about to go to middle school or whatever. And I see our resource officer or whatever the technical title is. And until about a year and a half ago, I didn't realize that wasn't part of the sheriff's office.
Right.
And I think a lot of people think of it that way. A lot of people assume, and I know in the high schools, all the high schools have at least one KPD and or sheriff's deputy as part of the team. But each school has their own separate police force, for lack of a better word, than KPD or Knox County schools. And I don't think a lot of people understand that aspect of how the school system works. So that's an interesting, that's something that I hear a lot of people talk about that, but not having direct experience in working it. So how long were you in as a school officer?
I was there a year.
A year? Okay. And so, again, so that being part of your kind of want to jump into the political sphere, what are your top couple of things that you really want to get in there and try to make some moves on to try to make some positive change, in your opinion, for the communities?
Well, first, safety and security is a big thing. It's a very big thing going on right now with inside the school system. Teachers that I talk to, they say they feel afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Times are changing. New gun laws are coming out. Matter of fact, they're arguing over 18-year-olds that can have guns now. So that is a bigger issue there. So that's one thing. Trades is another big option that everybody's talking about. In District 1, there are no trades in our high school. So I'm trying to want to push to put them back in middle and high school because that's how I made it off of trades. I like going to school, but trades really helped me say, hey, I'm going to school today, but I know I got trade classes to go to after my main classes.
Right.
So.
Okay. So I don't know. Again, for me, one of the things that I always kind of am looking at is the understanding of where the school board sits in this kind of relationship between county and state and stuff like that, and where the avenues to make some of these functional changes are. My understanding of it, as far as the resource officer side, that's pretty unique, and the school board can kind of do as they please with that side of it. But as far as how do we get, because I know Mayor Jacobs is big on the trades things too, but how do we kind of line those different groups up to get the end goal of having more trade options for our students?
Well, talking with other school board members that are there now, a lot of times that they're talking about the money, the county, the state is, but you got to have somebody to push from that district to say this is what. A lot of people they've always been stuck on college.
Right.
We want our kids
that was
to
my
go to college.
that was my generation.
Yeah.
I figure I got you by a couple years, but that was my thing when we were in school. It was presumed. It wasn't a conversation of should I. It's
right.
Which one.
Right.
And I think that's something that's been. I think that was a disservice to me personally, but that's a whole separate Crimey River kind of story. But realistically, I think that's one of the things that the culture has started to shift behind it.
Right.
We've started to go away from that assumption and that requirement to college, and I think it is advantageous for the school systems to catch up to that cultural move that's going on. And I think they're a little slow to pick that up because I hear a lot of talk about it, but I don't see a lot of action on it. And I have a whole bunch of real wacky ideas and better things and better ways to go about doing school stuff anyway. But I think one of the things that I think is the most problematic, and it's the hardest for most people to understand, is school board's relationship to the state.
Right.
My general educational term when I'm talking to people about it is one of the things that I think we as a community screwed up on is calling it Knox County Schools.
Right.
It's Tennessee State Schools. Knox County's chapter, subdivision, whatever little, but it needs to be that second line, because I think there's a really weird misnomer, and a lot of people will go at county commissioners and talk to them about stuff going on in the schools. A lot of people will go to the mayor's office, and the mayor does have some control, at least budgetarily, and certainly in the dialogue of what's happening in schools. But as far as Mayor Jacobs, he can't go up and say, be like, you know what, we're going to put this thing here.
Right. Exactly.
We're going to put this. We're going to institute this policy in the schools. It's not his job. And I think because of the way we have been trained as the community to look at it, we think it's an option. because even right now I'm already watching it happen in the politics game, is that different parties are laying different issues at different people's feet, and it's like, stop it.
Right.
You have all, like, you know, as a party that's been active in this, you know better, and you're propagating the issue to me. It's one of my top problems that I have as I'm trying to weed through everything that's going on here. That's, you know, again, talking about me, so we're here to talk about you. So again, you know, so you had you were in the Army for a little bit. You did some work as a resource officer. You know, you're obviously active in your community. But what is it for you? Like, what is, I don't know, your elevator pitch? Like, why why am I mean, I'm in District 4, so it doesn't matter, but why is District 1 voting for you? Why, when you meet somebody on the street and they're like, hey, I heard you're running for this, what's the deal? What's the pitch?
The pitch is always safety and security.
Okay.
Pitches, trades that we talk about because we used to have them. Now we don't have them anymore. And so that's the big thing with them. And then our literacy program. You know, I want to take it back to when I was in school, where we read so many books. We had this couple of papers that we did. We did an essay on the papers, the books, and we got prizes for it. Kids like prizes.
It's
so
true
if I
story.
want kids to read, hey, if you read so much if you read these many books, you get these many prizes.
Yeah, here's a way for me to tell you my age without telling you my age. I remember when I was in elementary school, Pizza Hut had the thing where you go and you get a little pan pizza or whatever.
Exactly.
You get the book and you got the little punch card, and they'd punch out one for each one. And when you got like 5 or 10, I don't remember how many it was, you got a free personal pizza. And I remember going and finding books,
Right.
just so I could be like, hey mom, I read this one. We're going to Pizza Hut and get a punch.
Exactly.
And that, I mean, to sell on that prize thing matters, because it's true. And I think one of the things that's missing is as well as, I think, trying to tie in what has become the natural norm for kids and their screens,
Right.
and using those to the best of our abilities to try to kind of find ways to use what kids are naturally going towards, prizes, their screen times or whatever, as an assistance tool. I think would be another interesting random aspect that I just came up with off the top of my head. But okay, so again, I don't do a scripted show. I don't have a lot of stuff. I didn't do a lot of research on you, so I'm kind of fumbling here to ask you more questions, because I don't know enough to know which questions to ask.
Right.
So you know, because I like this show to be as open and conversational as possible. I don't like it to be like, well, I want this. I do have a set of questions we do at the end, but that's been a campaign joke. But anyway, we'll get to that. And so again, to you, what's the end goal, I guess, for some of the things that you want? We get some of the security in place. We get the trades back in there. So we're getting more capable kids out. I mean, I'm assuming that's the
Right.
end goal. And so how do we move, we already talked a little bit about how to move that direction, the conversations need to happen. But how do we, I don't know, I guess to me is, how do we get it done? Because I think my concern here is that these conversations have been happening.
Right.
And I'm not seeing them get done. And so how do you uniquely take that to, okay, we're not allowed to just talk about this anymore. We've got to start seeing action. How do we get that part? How do we make that next step?
Well, that's what my slogan is all about. Is if you want action, you vote Jackson. And so
It's a good slogan.
That's my main goal. And my main goal is knowing 18-year experience in the law enforcement and security. That's what my goal is. So when they start talking about security and we start having the conversations they having after Anthony Thompson that was killed in school, that is a conversation that when people have it with me, I start talking about it, like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know we can do that. Well, you got to have somebody that has the experience in there.
Right.
And so same way with trades. Trades was a big part of my life. So, you know, if I know about trades, I know what it can do for you. When you tell somebody, well, what is it going to do for me? I say, well, $45 an hour for you to be a welder. And then you're thinking like, okay, that's okay. Then you start counting up your money.
Right.
You start to say, hey, I'm starting to make money. So maybe I need to get my kid and see if he likes welding. But everything in trades is making money. It's all about making money. Every time a plumber comes to your house, you make money. So that is the thing, having that experience. Plus, having all this experience brings a lot to the table. You're not, when you get in there and start want to argue about what you want to do for your schools, you got to bring everything you got to the table. Plus, this is one thing they'll say downtown that they've always told me, because I've always talked about trades. They'll say, well, we don't got the teachers. I said, well, there's a program, Troops to Teachers, that I've been trying to push with the military. Any military organization, whether it be the Marines or Army,
Those
Air
guys.
Force,
Psh.
yeah, them guys. So they can come out and be troops to teacher, and it is 6 years. The military pays half, the school system pays half. The crazy thing is, Knoxville, only thing they have in Knox County is ROTC. Now, if you go somewhere like Georgia, they have all kind of science teachers, English teachers, social studies teachers, math teachers. They have trade teachers, because if I'm a mechanic and I want to come out and be troops to teacher, I'll come out and teach a mechanic class. Now, you got me for 6 years. Now, now that I'm out and I do my 6 years up, I can stay on and come back to regular society. So that is
that's a killer program I've not heard about. That's a really cool program, because that is one of the complaints about a lot of guys coming out, is that, you know, the Department of Defense version of whatever profession you're doing for the Army or whatever it is doesn't, quote, translate when you're out looking for a job.
Right.
And so I think that's a killer cool program. I didn't know that existed. Like, I'm gonna have to do some looking into that.
Matter of fact, they tried to take it out. Biden wasn't going to renew it, and then he got some flack on it, and then they had to renew the program. The program itself works great, because it works good for like inner city schools where we don't have enough teachers, or somewhere like Chicago, somewhere like District 1, that they can come in and they're not scared of you know, we got a lot of crime in a lot of inner cities, you know, and so now that crime is on a rise, now you got a military guy coming in and say, listen, I'm not afraid to teach these kids.
Right.
You know, I know what it feels like to come from this area. I know what it feels like to have to grow up, you know, especially in a single parent home. I know that. So I went to the military, got myself together. Now I have some things to bring to the table.
I hear for sure, because I think one of the things too that I think that I think it's a broader issue than just the school system, but I think it's one of those things that we as constituents don't think that much about, is that, especially if we're going to stick on the trades part of the conversation for a little bit, you go out and get that $35, $45 an hour job. That's going to bring down crime on the streets.
Exactly.
Because I've got a job, I'm working. I don't have time to do that other stuff, or I'm not doing that other stuff in order to pay the bills.
Right.
I have the ability to take care of myself and my family and whatever that is, and it takes that option off the table. Because I always put it as like, you know, the more desperate you get, the more willing you are to do some things that
that's right.
You know better than. Like, it comes to, well, you know, it's starve or do this thing. Well, then I might be willing to do that thing, where it's like, you know, I don't know, that thing would be kind of cool, but I don't really care that much about it. Then I'm not going to do that thing that I might not do otherwise. And I think that's one of the things that I think that's a broader gap that's been developing over the relationship of what our schools are supposed to be doing for us as a community, not for me as a parent, not for you as a parent, but for the community at large.
Right.
Because again, you know, even, and then the capitalist in me is like, well, I'm seeing, you know, all these kids come out and they're having work. And so now when I need to get my AC unit fixed, there's a plethora of companies for me to choose from. I could shop and go find it, and maybe it might get a little cheaper. That'd be the only concern long-term I can think of, is that we put a bunch of HVAC or welding kids out of schools, then that starts driving wages down because there's too many to fill the job needs. But as of right now, that's going to be a while, because everything I've heard on the trades market is everybody's desperate for as many employees as possible, on top of everybody else that's desperate for as many employees as possible that's going on right now as well. Okay, so when I don't know. Again, like when you approach a problem, regardless of what the problem is, like, what's step one for you?
Step one always is do my research. If something comes up and somebody brings me something, I'm doing research on it, because the research you do on it, you have a better outlook on how you're going to prove your point of how to change it. And so that's the thing right there. A lot of times, that I've seen in school board meeting, they'll get something, or you'll tell a board member something, and they won't research it, and then they be in there arguing the pack. Then if you got somebody in there that might know, they think they know, then they kind of, it just becomes this arguing thing. Then people like lose interest. So I don't want that to happen. I want
like the lady at the Supreme Court that said there's like 100,000 kids in the ICU with COVID right now, which is certifiably false. But that's where, you know, it's like, you know, you're a Supreme Court justice, you don't have to know that much. Right. And again, that is a frustration for me as a citizen as well. I feel like there's this insular nature of elected bodies where wherever they get their information from is where they get their information from, and that's it.
Exactly.
And I think I think it's a little less problematic on the local level. It's not as bad on, a county or city level as it is on the national level, but it's still a thing that there's kind of this there's a gap between you and me as a constituent.
Right.
That so far, really, realistically, the school board hasn't been that bad at that one, but it does exist here as well. All right, so we're in there, we're doing the research. So that's step one. What's step two? Like of repairing a problem. We're just going to do an amorphous thing just to not get specific on it.
Well, once I do the research, I look at where it's working at. Start calling around to the different districts and see how it's working for them. The crazy thing is I spent my last 3 years in Morristown, and that's what they have. They have the technical path or college path. They still got it that way.
Right.
And so when I look back at their rates of how I look at the jobs in Morristown and Jefferson City there's many jobs and it's booming. And in Knoxville, now the jobs that when they want to come here, when a job comes here, they're looking to see how many workers do you have.
Right.
And so I'm not gonna come here and put a factory here if I know it ain't gonna work. So that's what we have to do. We have to push and trades and you said it, but trades, crazy thing is you can train a man in a year and a half to do a job because he's always training on that job. He's
right.
training every time. So we can really get things going within 2 years, plus what Mary Jacobs is doing with having that school. So they can come right out of high school. I got guys right now that saying, hey, listen, if you can get this off the ground, at least we can have apprenticeships that we can come and have kids come and work, during the summertime and work with us and learn what we do, plus what they can learn in school and come right out and get a job. So that right there is a plus.
Right. That tracks to me for sure. So let's shift back to some of the security conversation. You have the history in it. You've done the job itself directly in the school system. So what do we do? Like, how do we get, obviously I think when we get into the trades conversation, when we get into the better outcomes for students conversation, that's going to make security easier when, there's a hope, for lack of a better word. There's somewhere to go. There's a reason I'm here. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to move on with my life and that kind of thing. That will help some of the security problems for sure. But directly right now today, what's step, again, I don't know why I'm on steps today, but what's step one to addressing the Anthony Thomas? I always do that.
Anthony
Thompson. I apologize. How do we address that situation and do what can we do to not let these happen again?
Well, the big thing that I've seen with Anthony Thompson was that, you go back to, you can't take an element out of somewhere and then don't use it anymore and expect it to work. When you take 45 black officers out of the school system and they're gone, we got 15 inner city schools. And so what's in the District 1 is pretty much inner city. So you got 15 schools that most of them black officers have. And then how they were picked from that area. If you want to be a school security officer, if you applied, you were picked and you were placed in a school that you better fit, that you can help the outcome. And so so it's intentional that you're in the neighborhood. Because right.
now that you mention that, like ours here at my kid's school, he lives in the neighborhood next door to us.
Right. So
I actually know where his house is, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but
yeah, but that's a good thing because I know that if I'm having a problem with a student, and matter of fact, I had a student that took my phone out of my truck. I had turned my truck on, was trying to help do buses, and he reached right in my truck, got my phone, and started walking away with it. So I called him back. And so I asked him for my phone. Instead of arresting him, I went and talked to his mother. Said, listen, he took my phone out of my truck, so I'm leaving it to you to do the discipline because arresting him is not going to help.
Right.
What's going to help is that he's got to go home to mama, and mama's got to explain why did somebody come and ask her, why did this kid take his phone out? So things like that, knowing. If you know the students, that is a plus. And so the problem with Anthony Thompson was it wasn't that that they didn't know him. The problem is that the job. See, you got to not only know the students, you got to want to do your job.
Right.
And the problem with school security is for 8 years, it was just in bad shape. It was somebody that was there, stair-stepping. I know for a fact that the chief that was there before, he applied for 4 or 5 different jobs while he was there. This is not a stair-stepping job. This is we appoint you to this position. We want you to be here. We want you to give us results on how to keep our kids, our students safe, and our teachers and our staff safe, that everything goes according to plan. Now, like I said, that what was not going on.
Right.
We complained about it. School board members said, "Oh, we'll do something about it," but it seemed that they were in like a stuck mood that they didn't understand.
Right.
And a lot of times in this town that we know, we've had 3 school shootings or 3 incidents with a gun going off in the school.
Right.
And so it's not like up north and out west where they have it mass shootings. And that's not we haven't had mass shootings. We had incidents with a weapon in the school that went off. And
right.
And they believe that it won't happen down here. But the crazy thing is that we have more people integrated into Knoxville, especially after COVID came about.
Mm-hmm.
People's like, I'm coming from New York. I don't want to be cramped up. I'm coming to Knoxville. Different attitudes, different cultures are coming now here. So then that's when attitudes flare, bullying comes up. And so the more you do, the more that comes, the more that we need to put certain security in there. But the crazy thing about security is that we got to get away from the MOU, that whole situation. It was only one word change in that whole thing. One word.
Oh, that's actually what's going to be my next question on it, because I think that's one of the things that again, going back to, I think a lot of people don't understand that it's a different police unit, for lack of a better word, that does the school stuff majorly. And you're right, all that fuss about changing the agreement between how KPD and the sheriff's office can interact with the school system and how the school system security can do their kind of stuff. Yeah, as I followed it, it seemed like a lot was going on, and then nothing really changed.
Right. Exactly.
And so I guess again that falls at the when and if you get elected to this seat, you actually get a better play at trying to push through something to change that. So just on the idea of the agreement between the different bodies, what do you think a better system would be as far as how much KPD and Knox County Sheriff's Office should be, what kind of rules need to be in place for when they cross that threshold?
Right. So, looking back.
Actually, I'm sorry. I have a question. This is an old question that it just popped back in my head before you answer that question. When you're a school resource officer, is there specific school resource officer training that's specific to dealing with kids, dealing with the situations that kids are in versus dealing with adults like a normal cop?
Yes, there's a different situation. Understanding that when you're picked, you're asked, are you able to deal with children?
Right.
That's the thing. If you're dealing with adults is totally different. Dealing with children is talking. And a lot of times that when we were in there, we were taught that, hey, you had that idea that I'm going in working with kids. It's just like school board.
But there's continuous training on it as well.
There's continuous training, yes.
Because that was always my thing. And again, this ties into that agreement thing, is because as soon as I understood the idea that it was a separate entity, it's like, well, that's a separate entity trained to deal with kids. If we need more officers in the school, they need to be those officers that are trained to deal with kids. We don't need to bring in a KPD officer who's used to the worst of the worst in town in adults to then come try to apply that training set to a group of kids.
Right.
Now, again, I'm not gonna pretend that there wouldn't and couldn't be situations where we need outside help. We need KPD or Knox County coming in because there's a certain specific situation that, I mean, if nothing else, we need numbers for, because if we do have a Western style, mass shooting event, we need KPD officers on hand for something like that.
Exactly.
But for general use, everyday stuff, I don't understand the idea of ever having them in there. That's my thoughts on it. But again, that was the question I kind of was getting at, is that that's my thoughts on how the agreement kind of should write out. Like, where do you think a better way to use that relationship between local law enforcement and the school's own law enforcement?
Well, with talking with the last deputy chief that held the role as deputy chief, learning from him and explaining how his vision was, what it should have looked like. And now when I left, and I asked a couple of guys, are y'all still training? The crazy thing is, I can't lie and say that they are still training that way. They're not. They're not still training the way that we would train, because they don't have the same people in their training. They got a lot of unexperienced people in their training right now. You got, when I was coming through, we wasn't picking people that understood security, because security is totally different from law enforcement.
Right.
Security, it is on law enforcement, but security is totally different than the policeman on the street.
Right.
When you're security, your job is before action, not after action.
Right.
So the cops are after action. The security is before action. So that means I'm checking all doors. I'm checking all locks. I'm checking the bathrooms, make sure anybody just standing in the bathroom. I'm walking the campus to make sure all my fences are locked, stuff like that. If somebody's coming in the door, I'm seeing them before they get there. I'm noticing their moods. Policing, I call you, you come and you handle the situation. Security, what we have is, and the thing is, we have one of the most forces that a lot of other school systems don't have. We have our own security private force.
Right.
And that's a good thing, because that they can be taught the way, and they're employees of the school system, so they're taught and they under the policies of the school system.
Right.
And so that way things should be a certain way. But as school board members, we must know the policies and what they go through. We must see the training. We must understand the training that they go through. So if something is we don't like, we should be, hey, we need to change this policy and say, this is we like this training, but this training can be an after action kind of thing. Let's put this into the academy so they know what they're getting into. They kind of changed the school security whole academy into like a law enforcement academy in school.
Right, reactionary.
Yeah,
something happens, then we go do instead of more preparatory. Because that was like, again, using this specific case, that's the big case here in town. It was like, how does a student? Because I went to Bearden, which I'm not sure. I haven't been on campus on Austin East since we played football there in like '98 or something like that. So it's been a long time since I've been on Austin East campus. But Bearden's campus is extra weird because we have a bunch of outbuildings. Mm-hmm. Then we had what little bit of tech stuff was in a separate building at the bottom of the hill on the other side of the stadium. And so that in and out was normal. That was the regular kind of deal over there. And so, like, for me, one of the first questions I asked is, how did he leave, go get that gun, and then come back in? Especially when you have security that's supposed to be keeping an eye on that. And, and again, it's like, it seems to me that it wasn't being paid attention to until the situation arose, instead of being preventative, as you were talking about.
Right. So, I did a live, and in my live, I got a call from a friend, and they said, man, you done put everybody in jail. Everything you said was right, but you put everybody in jail because of the fact is you found flaws everywhere. Policies wasn't followed. It was a bad situation. It turned into craziness. And so same thing, what I look at is, at that situation, I look at, there was gaps. There was gaps, what we said before. The crazy thing is, I called it out a month before it happened and said, Mr. Superintendent, you got gaps, so you got to fix it. But then it was like, no, everybody thought, oh, he's just talking. And no, if there's gaps in your security and you don't know it, that's a problem. And so elementary, there's gaps. You got kids that's, if I wear a uniform, any uniform, bread uniform, anything like that, and I'm at a back door and I can get to the back door, I can get in at school.
Right.
And so, the problem same with middle school is, if same way with them is, well, if I want somebody to bring me some food or bring me something, I can prop open the door. When I was school security, I caught so many doors propped open at Vine. I worked Vine and Austin East. Right. Because people were going out the doors, kids were going out, or teachers might be running out to their car, they'll prop the door open. You got to have that security conscious. And so with high school, same thing. I'm grown. I might be driving and I got something in the car I want to get. I might got some food that somebody's coming to bring me. So you have to be continuously. When you get done with work, if you're not, as a security officer, if you're not tired, you should be walking at least about 10, 15 miles that day.
Right.
And if you're not doing that, sitting inside an office looking at a camera, you can't do that.
Right.
And so one thing I would say is, if you're supposed to be 2 officers in every high school, and it's supposed to be 2 officers in every high school, 1 in elementary and 1 in middle school. And South Door High School needs to have 3 because of the fact. So if you look at your school and you say, well, I got almost like a small college campus like South Door High School,
right,
I might need to have 3.
Right.
And so
now, is there rules on the book? Because like everything else in the school system, it's like 20 kids, 1 teacher. What is it, like 2,000 kids, 1 social worker?
Well, they don't have anything on the books yet and that's what I say, policies have to be formed that they do not have in place, but they're supposed to have 110 officers, period, in their security. So if you got 110 officers, you're covering the school, because you don't only use the security officer, you got teachers that are watching out. And so if you got inside the school, it's supposed to be some kind of security community also in there. Say, hey, we're watching out for certain. If I'm by this door and I hear this door open, I'm supposed to call security and say, hey, I got a problem in this door. Right. But if I'm continuously walking around that room, that school, plus the camera situation, then they'll argue, well, how am I supposed to watch the cameras? Well, everybody knows I got a phone and I can see what's going on. If I'm in Hawaii, I know who's ringing my doorbell. So that's what we want. We try to. it's always about a money issue, but a lot of things is not even money because if you got a smartphone, the camera system in your school should be able to pull up on your phone that you can see your school, period, any time of the day, any day of the week.
Right, that's actually through most of that. I'm sitting here thinking dollar bill, dollar bill, dollar bill, dollar bill, because I think that's one of the easy universal things that we can all complain about with the schools is that we don't have enough money. And so again, it's school board, so we're shifting off security for a little bit, even though this applies as well. How do we go about? I don't know, like, because I try to get on that state board of education financial thing. They didn't choose me. Apparently, I'm not cool enough to be a part of that team. But again, like, I've had a whole fascination with trying to figure out how this funding thing is, and I joke all the time about how sad it is for Knox County at large that I'm probably one of the more educated people on how we fund our schools. It's not a good thing. It's just I got curious, and so I called Ron McPherson in. I had Jennifer Owen and a couple other people come in here and talk to me. I've talked to a couple of the state reps about it, trying to understand this money thing, and you know, I'm not a fan of the idea that more money fixes.
Right.
But, you know, just like you were just listing off, you know, how many it should take. Should we put numbers in place for every, 500 students, we need to have at least one officer on site or something like that. Whatever the numbers that make sense to a more security minded person than myself do. But that's, that's another salary. That's another salary. Then we got teachers that are underpaid and this, that, and the other. How do we go about figuring out how to do better with the money we have? And or getting more money, because that's I think on a political standpoint, I think that's going to be the biggest one that's a sales pitch. I think you make some great points, because I think even myself in following all the different stuff going on, I did not think about school board's impact on security policy, which is like it's universal. Right. That's one of the few things that they have almost complete control over the way we're set up here, and I didn't think about that, and that's I'm very grateful for you to bring that part up. But nonetheless, I still think finances are probably the most ubiquitous issue that people around the county care about, because there's those out there with no kids. And it's like, well, I'm paying taxes for this. Right. I don't got kids in this system. Or there's those that have the ability to send their kids to a private school or whatever. And they're like, I'm paying taxes and I don't get part of this. Even though I'd still argue that we get some better mechanics and welders and all that other stuff out of our school system. That's good for us anyway. But, in the direct, how do we do better with the money we have kind of conversation, how to make more funds available for more security officers? Where do we start with in that conversation?
Well, it was asked at the last school board meeting that I remember that I seen. One of the school board members asked, well, what is the budget? They asked Mr. Oates, what is the budget? And he said, well, I don't know, about $6 million, $4 million. He said $5 to $6 million. Well, the crazy part is I redid the budget for school security. One of my partners was trying out for the job, and I said, well, when I redid the budget for him and how it looked, the 110 officers, everything that I said, I put 110 officers in there. I put the ability for the cameras on the phone. We kind of downsized the belt that it looked like. We kind of downsized the uniform, how the uniform looked. It looked more universal, that, I don't look like a police officer. I look like a person, a regular person, like the ones you see at the bank, how they have the black, same uniform on. We kind of downsized, we kind of upped the pay for the officers. We split things up so that they get more, if something happens in their school, they know who they need to talk to, and they got a better command staff working their way up. Did stuff with putting somebody in there that understood finances, put a technical guy in there where our gal, who can work with cameras, who can do the different stuff with the body stuff that we use, the cameras that we use for body cameras. I did the little flying thing. I got two of the flying things where we can, if we had a football game or something like that, and we can fly it over, we can watch what's going on. With the bikes, we even put that in there where we have electric bikes. Regular bikes that turn into electric that they can use on game days and stuff like that. Everything that I put in there, the budget came up to $2.9 million. So my question to the system is, what are you doing with the other $4 million?
Right.
Yes. If it's $6 million, what are you doing with it? So if I can cover all the way down with command staff, the chief, and everybody else with at least $3 million, then I got $3 more million. What are we doing with that? So the security is covered. So we don't even have to go back in and dip back into a budget if we got to get
right. And if you're mass right and it can cover everything you're covering, we're throwing a couple million back into the general fund.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I mean, again, I am excitedly fascinated about a whole sub aspect of what's going on here that I didn't consider before. Like, I did not think about school board's impact on security, and so I'm fascinated now, and I got more stuff to read and think about on top of everything else going on. So, all right. So, all right. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of any bases specifically that I wanted to try to cover. That I'm missing, and I think I've covered everything that I had planned. Is there anything that you could think of that I'm missing that you feel is important to talk about?
Well, I do feel to end that security part was to say that I believe that we need to have just our security inside our schools, and not and let KPD and the sheriff officers pretty sure that they patrol on a regular day basis. If it's an officer in the area, he should be the one to say, hey, let security know that whoever their officer is, let us know if you have any problems, call us in.
Right.
But having two people in that school is not a good idea because, like I said, we can't control KPD. And so I was talking with both sheriffs, and like I told them, listen, and this is always said, if we have the right chief, then we will be able to pull out. Again, we still, not to say that I've met with the new chief, not to say he's the wrong guy, but having somebody that doesn't understand what is going on and not somebody that's coming from security. You want somebody to come from a security background that came up in security to understand it. When you got somebody come from law enforcement, and that's what they did. They said they didn't want nobody from law enforcement, but you still got somebody that was a special agent. That's what his job was. He didn't come from security background.
Right.
He only had five years of security background. So that is the issue. So again, when you're a school board rep and you know what's going on, you gotta know different aspects of the job. It's like being a pastor. You know, you gotta know different aspects of the job. But if you don't, you'll miss things that that's very important. So that's the problem with school board, is that you miss the stuff that is important. And like I said, like right now, trades, same thing with that. People say, well, we it's gonna cost money to give us back. I said, well, bind us our way. The kids out there have trades,
right?
But the kids over in First District, they do not. So when you say, what can we do for you? Well, don't say what you can do for me and promise me in campaigns. Listen, work with whoever's on the school board that says they want to do something like this to bring it back. That will help out tremendously. Sometimes you just gotta open your mind up and say, okay, it is out here. So yeah, we need to do something. We need to designate a building. If we got to find a building to designate for, because there's no room in Austin East, let's designate a building that we can put this trades in, that we can work this out.
Right.
Because we said that we're trying to work together to get something out of this. That's what we need to do.
Right. Because I found it fascinating. I didn't know this when I was talking to Brianna, that Austin East is categorized as an arts school.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't know that was something that we did on the grand scale of schools. Is like, I know we have like STEM Academy downtown that's a little bit different and stuff like that. But as far as, just random high school out of a hat, I didn't know that they had, this one was focused on X, Y, or Z. I just thought it was, we all have the mass curriculum that we all have to go through to get out of here. So what are we doing? And so I find that an interesting little subset, because I don't know what the other schools are supposed to be specialties at, other than maybe, like Farragut's got a good baseball team every year. That's the only thing I can think of. And Austin East men's soccer was kicking ass this year too.
That's
so
right.
It's always good to see that kind of, because I think that's the other one too, that because I'm an arts dork to say the least. I'm a band kid. I was through Bearden and marched in UT's band and stuff like that. And so as much as I don't specifically do, I picked up a lot of this technical stuff that I do for the podcast from being a band dork and being in bands and doing stuff like that. But as far as on a day-to-day thing, like, band is nothing specific in my life, but is the most important thing that I've ever done in my life.
Right.
Met my wife in the band, had a bunch of good friends that I'm still friends with today in the band, but just the lessons of how band works and how you have to be part of a whole. It's not about you, it's about the whole kind of thing, and all those kind of lessons that get in there. And sports does that same thing that I think is important, that in budget conversations, it's easy to be like, it's just soccer. Instead of being like, it's not just soccer, it's a team building and determination and discipline and all those other things that go into being soccer, that I think we all forget about. And I think I'm as guilty of as anybody, as much as I am a band dork. Okay, so I've got a set of 5 questions that I want to do. This is my standard 5 questions, every candidate that comes in here. I I have to make an adjusted version for you because you are an independent. We'll talk about that before I go to my 5 questions. Why? Why independent? Why aren't you running as a party member?
Well, I've always been an independent. When I was growing up, my parents and everything were Democrats, and so when I got out and went to the military, you find out that when you're in the military, you're independent. You're not on a certain party, and you can't pull for a certain party. So you start to see life a little differently. And so that's why I'm independent, because I see things different. I see what the Democrats want, and I see what the Republicans want. But we got to come and I'm going to say this. When the Democrats and Republicans are not in the, when we're not in the, when people are not in the room, Democrats and Republicans are in the room, there is no party. They're just in there making decisions.
Right.
But when the public comes in, when we're out and about, it's, hey, I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican. But, at the end of the day, independent, we leaving some people out, and it's the people we're leaving out.
Right.
So as an independent, I am for the people, trying to get the job done for them. I'm not trying to work on towards what the party wants, and I'm working towards what the people want. Everything that's on my campaign is directly for what the people said. It's what the kids wanted in their school. It's what the parents feel that they want for safety, and so I take everything from parents, teachers, and the children. That's it.
Okay, and so that reminded me of a couple other things before I get to the 5 questions. So this last school board, 2 school board sessions ago, they put out their legislative agenda for the year, and for the first time in like a couple of decades, pushing back on vouchers was not top of the list. How do you feel about vouchers in the system? You think that's something that again, from the parent kid kind of looking at it and or teacher part of it, as how do you because I mean, again, like to me, as I'm looking at the landscape, especially on the state level races, I think that's going to be a big topic in these election cycles. They're going to call it parent choice or something like that because voucher sounds bad, but then the Democrats are going to call it, defunding schools kind of thing, like they do. And so, like, how do you feel like vouchers are an automatic no? Like, do you feel like that's something that the current school board screwed up by taking that off of the top of their list of things?
Well, I'm going to say this. Community schools is where we got to go back to. Right now, I can say this, that we only have, 700 kids in Austin East? And then we only have about 300 kids at Vine. But in South Doyle, there's 1,200 kids in the middle school. And so when you start talking about parent choice as well, I want my kid to go over here.
Right.
I think they got a better education. Well, that's not what the school system is supposed to be. It's supposed to be everybody gets the same education. Everybody got the same books. It doesn't matter if your science book is 2 years old to the ones that's brand new. It's still the same education. And so when we get to the part where we're saying, well, I want my kid not to go to Austin East. I live right next door to. I want to go to Fulton. You're taking away. Every time you take a kid away from that school, you're taking funding away from that school. So if we stay there, then that'll be it. Vouchers for me. Community school is what's better,
right?
Because when you get to the fact that now we got bus issues, we ain't got nobody working, so now we have bus issues. So every day my kids go to Chahowie and Sunnyview, and every day I get a call. Well, this bus is not going to be here today because this bus can't do it. And so if we're in that much trouble, then there's a problem. If we got community schools, we won't have a bus accident we had last time,
right?
And so with parent choice. It sounds good, and they've done it before, but the problem is that you got a school over that you're living next door to, or you're down the street from. That's what we want to get back to. That our kids are going to this school, and our fundings will stay at this school. Right now, we're struggling asking for funding because we only have 700 something kids,
right?
And so that's the issue.
All right. Okay, cool. Again, like this, like I said, I'm unscripted, and so that whatever we were talking about reminded me of that. So, all right. So back to the 5 questions that I alluded to earlier. All right. So it's kind of a random set of questions. Some of them are pretty serious politics questions. Some of them are pretty silly. Number 1 is political history and or future. So is this the first time you've run for a seat of office? If you've run for something before, what is it? That kind of stuff. And is this seat the beginning of a political career for you, or is it just something specifically that you want to do now?
I ran in 2020 for District 1 for County Commissioner.
Okay.
And so what I was running County Commissioner, my views were mostly school board. And so after losing the race, I said, okay, I need to regroup and figure out what's best for me. And so I thought about some things I wanted to run. A lot of people told me they wanted me to run countywide. But right now we have two countywide positions that I could run for uh, sheriff or mayor or maybe another county commissioner position, but it wouldn't help the school situation. So I said, well, the best thing to do is run for my District 1 schools. So that's what I did.
Well, one of the guys running for Commission 10 is running on schools, which I'm curious to. I can't wait to talk to him. I got him scheduled some early. I'll have to look his name up. Okay, so that's the past version of it. But do you see yourself continuing in politics? That this is something that you have a long-term passion for, or is it get the schools on the right track, do that kind of thing, and then move on to other things in your life?
Well, I told my wife the other day. I said, listen, I think I'm gonna stay in school board for a while, even to probably at least after my kids graduate. I want to keep it on the right path, and then before leaving, trying to get a right person in there to run, to take my place. And I don't see myself hopping to different seats. I think that school board is pretty much it for me, and work that out.
Gotcha. All right, number 2 is, what is your favorite ice cream?
Chocolate.
All right, easy enough. First guy I asked the question to told me some gelato, and I was like, "That's not ice cream." I asked ice cream anyway. Number 3, I'm just messing with you, Dino. Relax. Number 3 is favorite place to eat, favorite local, wherever you go. When
I like the Brazilian steakhouse. That's my favorite.
the Brazzaros or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah, that is pretty good. That its place is dangerous. I eat too much when I.
That is true. I eat a lot there.
All right, so the 4 and 5 talk a lot about partisanship, so they're going to be a little bit off centered since you're running as an independent. But especially it applies because of the school board races and what's going on. Do you feel like the partisanship helps citizenry in the process of electing? I mean, school board specific for you, but just in general, do you feel like partisan is a bonus or a hindrance to the process not for the person running, but for the community at large, for the voters that are out there trying to make a decision?
I think that it hinders because for the longest for the city we do nonpartisanships. So I think it hinders.
I mean, sorta. This year was not.
Well, yeah. But I think that it hinders because, and I tell a lot of people that don't understand this. I said you vote for the national level, and you do. We have a lot come out for national level. I said, but all your stuff that happens for you is locally, your state and local government, and they don't come out because they're thinking, it's all national. There's nothing that not saying nothing, but the president doesn't make all the decisions for the government.
Because I think for me, that was one of the things that got me rolling into this. This show started completely apolitical, but it's something that me and my buddies that do the main show always have talked about. Whether we're hanging out at the bar, watching a football game, we always get into some political argument, and then it always boils down to we need to pay better attention to what's going on locally.
Right.
Because all the little things, the real things, the street that I drive down every day, the lights on the corner, the schools that my kids go to, all those little things are right here. Right here in front of me. And I don't, at the time when we started the show, I was like, I'm not sure who the mayor is. Like, I didn't understand, that we have general in August instead of November. Everything important happens at the November election. No, here in town, it's the August.
Right.
And I don't, and I think that's sadly the normal outlook for a lot of people. And so that's what I'm trying to gap fill with this. I want to find a way to get normal people more engaged and accessible to what's going on here locally, who these people are, who's doing what. Because the more I dig into this, I find there's a couple hundred people. There's a couple hundred people and 500,000 in Knox County.
Exactly.
That are really neck deep, know who's what, where, how to get X, Y, and Z done. And the rest of us are just kind of walking around watching what's going on, just dealing with whatever the consequences of those couple hundred people that are really, really into it, that know who and what and where and why. And all those who and what, all those couple hundred people, I don't know how many elected offices we have in town. I mean, we got 25 something on this election. So we've got, 50 of those 200 are in seats. So it's like 150 people that don't have seats and probably work for somebody's campaign. Those are the people that are actually paying attention. It's like, well, we are the people that are supposed to be who these 200 people are working for, so we need to do better. That's my goal in the show, honestly. Okay, so to continue on the partisan thing, so number 5 is, again, this is kind of poking at partisan. It's a little weird for you as being an independent, so I'm going to give you an adjusted version. The standard question is your favorite person from the party that you're not a part of, but since you're an independent, I'm going to give you make it a 2-parter, and give me a Republican, whether it's local, state, or national, and a Democrat that you really like, you feel like is doing good work, that has a positive net something to you.
Okay. Well, when I look at it, I look at I like Mayor Jacobs. You know, I worked with Mayor Jacobs when he was running for office. I think that he's trying to do what he said he wanted to do, and I like working with him, trying to get the job done, especially for within schools and within county government also. Yeah. So,
Okay.
and who I
See,
I'm not.
it's funny you use that example too, because a lot of people liken Mayor Jacobs to a libertarian, and I think he's a crappy libertarian. I like myself to be a libertarian more than if I'm going to have to pick a quote real party, which a lot of people wouldn't count libertarians as a real party. Anyway, but if I was to pick one, I'd call myself a libertarian, and at least in practice, Mayor Jacobs has not been a very good libertarian to me.
Right.
But again, he's running as a Republican. As a Republican, you feel the obligation of part A of the question. So moving to part B on the Democrat, a Democrat that you like. And again, it doesn't have to be a local one. It can be a state or national.
Well, I'm gonna say this, and our city mayor, I don't see
That's
that.
fun. I like that. Even though is that a partisan race?
Well, you know what? No, not you know what?
Not technically?
Not technically, because you know when you look at it, she feels.
I mean, I'll accept
Democrats,
the answer.
Right. So I just it's decision making for me. You know, making the decision like this chief position that's coming up. You know, national search is good, but it's you appoint this person.
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter what I go and say. You appoint it because, like I said, she can appoint you today and fire you tomorrow. She can appoint me today and fire me tomorrow. So, you know, you make the decision. So that calling around asking people and stuff like that, make the decision, you know. And that's what I look for in a leader. You know, I need you to make the decisions that we put you in charge of making.
Right.
So that's my problem with, that's my, you know, that's what I feel about, you know, that.
Cool. All right. So that's all I had. If you have any campaign stuff that you want to plug real quick, a website, Facebook page, whatever way people can learn more about your campaign, other than what we went over to today, the floor is yours for that.
Okay. If you can catch me right now, you can catch me on Reginald Jackson on Facebook. Just spell my name out, Reginald Jackson, Jackson.
You have your initials in there too, so it's Reginald M.
Well, it's Reginald M. Sorry, Reginald M. Jackson. I got two of them, so that's
fair enough. I'm just saying, like, if people are looking for it, the one with the M works. That's how I got a hold of you.
So that will be that's where I put most of my stuff on. Again, I am still working. Currently, what I'm working on right now is Dad's on Duty. That will be something that I've seen in another state, and a couple of school people called and asked, "What do you think about that?" So that's something that we were trying to plug in right now with volunteer dads come volunteer in, and just working along with students, so that we won't get to that the Anthony Thompson situation or any other situation like that. That's what I'm working on now. So.
And so is there a contact or link? Is that got a Facebook page of its own so people can look up and find anything
the same
about that?
On my Facebook right now.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So Reginald Jackson or Reginald M. Jackson are on Facebook are good access points for you. That's all I got. If you got anything, last thing you can hit me with it, or we're gonna do an outro and call it a day.
Okay. The last thing I got is that we will try to. I am working on it now. Also, literacy program, not a literacy program, but a financial literacy program.
Okay.
Starting at K through 12, and my wife gave me this great idea, and she said, well, Monopoly, learning how to play Monopoly, buying and trading, doing real estate, and so I thought about it. I said, well, you know what? That's crazy. It is that sounds like that'll work.
I think that's one of those things. I do think that's one of the things that's missing in schools. Yeah. The debt situation that we live in general as Americans is only worsened by the financial illiteracy that we are kicking kids out of school with. You know, like checking into cash places and stuff like that are some of the worst things you can do, but they're so well sold that it's going to get you through the gap. Right. And, you know, that could be a one-page thing in a booklet of a classroom that says, yeah, you could do it, but here's how these things work, and this is what's going to happen to you, and then you're going to get into this cycle until one day you lose your car or whatever it is that you put as collateral. Those places are terrible. Anyway, not to go on a side tangent on that, but I do think, you know, some basic little, like what seems basic to us old people that, you know, I haven't seen with my kids. Are probably a little too young so far, but like I had an employee not long ago, 22 years old. Vendor comes in, drops stuff off, and it's like, hands her the invoice, and he's like, I need a check. And she's like, okay. She goes and just rips a blank check out and hands it to him, doesn't sign it or anything. And it's like, He's like, you got to fill out the check. And she's like, I don't know how to fill out a check.
That's right.
It's like, you're 22 years old. You don't know how to fill out a check. I understand it's 2022. We do everything online. We do mobile banking and all that kind of crap. But it's not a highly complex thing that you couldn't have spent a couple minutes.
Right.
That we couldn't just do it could be a half a year class. It doesn't have to be a whole year long class. Exactly. That we could do some financial literacy stuff. Because I think, just little stuff that for some reason, and maybe it's a parent's issue, I don't know, but for some reason it just kind of falls off or has fallen off the normalcy thing. And that I think could help out a lot, because I think especially with all the debt situation that we're getting into, people that are getting raised to think they're supposed to go to college. And then somebody says, I'll give you a loan for that. And I was reading the story. There's people collecting their Social Security check that's getting garnished.
Exactly.
For their student debt. So they lived their entire professional life and never paid off that debt.
Exactly.
And that was what the point of the debt was for, was to get them that professional job so that they could live well, and they still can't pay it off. So It's ridiculous. All right. That's all I got, man. I appreciate you so much for coming out. Let's do an outro. Reginald M. Jackson, everybody. You can use the M. You don't have to use the M. I don't know, whatever works to get you wherever you want to get to on Facebook to find him. Very interesting. Again, I did not think about the school security as far as it goes to the school board. I'm really excited to learn more about that today. And I hope you guys learned some stuff out of that too. We're Almost in Agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can go to our website. It's almostinagreement.com. All our episodes are available there, as well as my job description sheet, which I'm going to have to add security to the school board job description sheet because I didn't think about it. Or you can go to your favorite podcast provider, run all of those. While you're at any of these places, please like, subscribe, share, something like that. I'm going to be running through a ton of candidates, so if you want to get all these automatically on your phone or whatever, subscribe to the show and they'll pop up and tell you their new episode came out. We're Almost in Agreement. We got a big show tomorrow night, but I get the weekend off before I get back into campaign mode. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you all soon.